Summers for sure, but a couple years working as camp director at El Camino Pines, one of your local Lutheran Bible camps. But before that, I was a parish pastor in Minnesota. And technically my title was Pastor of Family Faith Formation. Sounds pretty cool, right? It meant that I spent a lot of time with young people during the summer because all that excitement happens when we do vacation Bible school and we go to camp for a week and, of course, do a mission trip. I've been on mission trips when I was a kid and when I was in college, but getting to do that as an adult is a whole nother experience. Apparently, you're in charge and you make decisions for other people. That was new. But I think we did a pretty good job. The first year I got to go, we went to Erie, Pennsylvania. Never been to Pennsylvania before. And on our way to Erie, we were stopping to see something. Every time we went on a mission trip, we had something that we did together to kind of create a bond and, get our kids to know one another before we went to do the service building trip. So this particular time we went to Niagara Falls. How many of you have been there? Oh my gosh, I love Niagara Falls. It was very neat. First of all, I had just gotten an iPhone, so I have all the cool pics from Niagara Falls. But also we got to do the cave tour with the wind and the thing, and then we got to look out at the Canadian side, which is so much cooler than our side, and got to experience this majestic piece of God's creation. I'm not a history buff, but I'm really into historical places and monuments, so this was all my jam. I thought, okay, if we do this every mission trip, sign me up. So naturally, when we went on our next mission trip, we were headed to Maysville, Kentucky. I've never been there, so I thought that was fun. But on our way, I was informed beforehand that we would be stopping to go zip lining. That is not like observing God's creation. That is altogether the opposite, at least for me. Many of you, we know each other a little bit, but people who know me well know this is never something Nikki would sign up for. Zip lining, for those of you who are unfamiliar, some of you have done it because I can see it in your faces. It's kind of like a roller coaster, sort of. You're in a harness, you're hooked up to a cable, and the cable runs from tree to tree, and you zip from tree to tree. To some people, that sounds very exciting. To people like Pastor Nikki, this sounds terrifying. And I thought, why would I want to do that, number one, even if someone else is paying for it? Number two, why would I want to do it as an example for a group of young people that I'm bringing? I wouldn't. But I put it in the back of my mind because I thought I'm never going to convince them not to do this. Now they're excited. And they would bring it up kind of intermittently every Sunday, like, oh, Pastor Nikki, have you thought about this? I'm like, oh my gosh, you have no idea. I think about it daily. So as we got closer to the trip, we're in the caravan, and we're driving along, and I start to feel my breath kind of quicken. Because now I figured out I can't really get out of this whole experience. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm feeling a little bit nauseous. Maybe that would get me out of this. Like, maybe I have an emergency at home. It's never good when your pastor starts thinking how they can lie to get out of something. Bad sign. So as we get there, we have to meet at the bottom of the hill, and then we drive up in this camp in Ohio to go to the zip line. And I begin to see the people who are greeting us, and this is where I totally got judgy. And I looked around, and it's a lot of fun-loving college kids. And I'm like, oh, they're going to keep us safe. Perfect. Okay. So we get into the gear room, and that's where it all kind of hit the fan. So we're in the gear room. We're in a round, and there's gear on the floor, so everyone has to look at one another. This is not a good thing, because we're all standing behind our gear looking at one another, and I start to feel, that moment where the scale is tipping, and I've got water brimming up in my eyes, and I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to go well. And thankfully, this very sweet woman who's on our trip, fun-loving lady, her name's Susan, she leans over and just with the best of intentions says, Pastor Nikki, it's going to be okay, and she goes to hug me. And I looked at her and I said, do not touch me. Because I just knew, and as soon as she did, I started streaming. I'm just picturing everything in slow motion, and everyone's looking at me, and I'm like, ah! And I darted out into the other room and went, and kind of mascara wiped everything, and got it together and came back out and tried to look normal. I don't have a very good poker face, so this was not a good experience. And I'm like, okay. So you put on the harness, They've got straps, so you strap those down, and then those fun-loving college students I told you about, they walk around and make sure you've got it on tight enough. Okay. Walk around, pull those, they give you a helmet, and they look at you and they say, "Are you ready?" And they're used to people being like, "Yeah, mister," and I'm like, "No, just don't talk to me," because I know this is gonna go poorly. So at this point, I'm trying to figure out how I can get out of this without lying. So I'm just going to do it in a sneaky way. So all my kids will just go on ahead because they're excited, and I'll just move to the back, slowly like, "Oh, Timmy, that's cool. All right. Yeah, Johnny, and just get to the back of the line. These moms that you bring on these trips, she looks at me, Katie looks at me, and she says, "Pastor Nikki, you've got to be in the first third of people that go." Well, no, I do not. Thank you. She said, "But otherwise you're not going to go." That is true. And she's like, "No, you can't do it." I'm like, "Okay." So we get to this spiral staircase. Thankfully, I'm not afraid of heights. I don't know why that kind of factors in, but we get to the spiral staircase, and you're up 2 flights, and then you clip into the tree. It's never a good sign when they say, "Make sure to clip into the tree." Okay, so I'm clipped into the tree. Fun-loving dads. I'm sure there's nice ones of you. These were not the fun-loving, nicest dads in the room, because they think this is hysterical that Pastor Nikki is freaked out of her mind, and they're like, "Pastor Nikki, blah, 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 blah." Thank you. Don't remember anything you said because it was rude. And so I'm like getting in a zone, and I'm starting to watch my kids, and I'm like, I'll just enjoy them. Like they'll love it, and I will love it. So I watch our first kid kind of go around, and you're supposed to kind of direct yourself. Okay, they're flinging everywhere, and they get to the bottom of the first zip line. Did I mention there's not just one, because it's fun for people, so there's several connected, and I figure out if I get to one, there's no way to get down. And I'm thinking, perfect, excellent, because I thought if I did one, I could climb down. Not a thing. So it's my turn, and there's a little platform on the edge, and that fun-loving college student, "Hey, come on," and he pulls me up there, and he's like, "Okay, are you ready?" And he says, "Go ahead." I'm like, "Go ahead what?" He said, "You have to step off." No. And I turn and look at Susan, and I said, "Susan, you have to say something." Because everyone's looking at you, it gets really weird. Everyone's looking at you, and I said, "Susan, say something." And she said, "Let it go, let it go." It was the best! Because I don't know, somehow it led me to drop my feet off this platform. I was completely silent the whole time. It was terrifying. I probably would never do it again. Don't tell anyone. Because it wasn't for me. It was fun, it was exciting, I made it through, I learned that I could do something that I didn't think I could do. But it was that step of faith that I thought, oh my gosh, is this really what God is calling us to? I always think of that story when we read this story about Peter coming out of the boat. When you think about the idea of standing at the edge of something and needing an encouraging word to say, okay, here we go, what are we going to do? And whether it's let it go, if you want to play that on repeat, or Jesus' word, come, to Peter, it's that word of invitation that says you're entering into something new, whether it's a new job, you've lost a loved one, you're welcoming a new baby into your life, maybe you're starting in a new school or you're changing neighborhoods, whatever it is, whatever new thing you have going on, it's scary and it's challenging and it's life-changing. And we stand there waiting for an encouraging word, waiting when someone says, "Are you ready?" And you say, "Well, you're going to need to do better than that." To say something that gets us out of the boat. I want to put on repeat, at least in my life and maybe for you, the first words that Jesus says. Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. I need that in my life daily. I mean, every day I could just play that on repeat. Eliminate my own little self-talk and have that playing. Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And then I think I could step out of that boat just like Peter did. This summer, we're working through a preaching series. We've been working through belong, become, and be. And Deacon Lynn entered into our last section last week, be. In the process of reminding ourselves that we belong to God, that we are in fact the community, the body of Christ, that we continually strive to become who God desires us to be. Now we're at the quote-unquote easy part of just being. All we have to do is just be what God told us to be. just be it. I got thinking, you know that Nike slogan, just do it? Did you know that came out in the 80s? Let's just all have a moment for that, okay? 1988, just do it became their mantra because they were trying to make fitness and that athletic lifestyle something for everyone. So they wanted people to feel like, just do it. You don't have to be this way or that way, but just do it. You can be a part of it. That's how I hear Jesus' invitation today. That if we're trying to be what God intended us to be, then Jesus just says, just be it. He says it real casual in my brain right now. Just be it. And I want us to think about what if we were working through that today? To think about that, replacing that self-talk that we have. Do you have this that tells you what you do isn't enough, you aren't enough, what decisions you make, those aren't important. But rather, we replace that with who God has intended us to be. And we get to just be what God has taught us to be. I want you to turn to your neighbor and out of the love of Christ, tell them, just be it. Just be it. Okay, now say it in a frustrated way, like, seriously, just be it. Just be it. Okay, how about your best grandma encouragement voice? Just be it. Oh, just, right? We hear that word, right? Today, I want you to walk from this place thinking, well, we just have to be it. And to know that God's limitless love propels us forward so that we can do just that, to just be it. The plight of a preacher is that we are challenged to talk about the things that are going on in our world and connect it with our text and understand that God continually speaks to us. And sometimes pastors and preachers get really fancy and think we'll just get our sermon done on Monday and have all this time. That's why Chris Chigaritas, I'm going to get you my sermon title. It's going to happen tomorrow for next week, and I'll have a clear idea of what I'm talking about, right? But then something happens. And so you're getting half of a sermon that I intended to preach today and half of the sermon that I needed to preach today. Are you guys ready to come along with me? Yes. Wonderful. You get to anyways. Yesterday, I woke up, and Scott and I got on Facebook like we do, and my Facebook feed was covered with the news of Charlottesville, Virginia. And if you haven't seen it or heard about it, it is worth your attention and your time. A little background for folks who haven't seen it. There was an alt-right gathering in Charlottesville, Virginia, but it was more so than alt-right. There were white supremacists present and white nationalists that gathered in Charlottesville, Virginia this weekend in 2017. Gathered. If you haven't seen the pictures or the videos of the gatherings, they are staggering. People marching by torchlight, many dressed for battle with helmets and shields, shouting Nazi-era slogans and other hate speech. This kind of mob mentality that turned from standing for something to standing and literally brawling with one another. Clashing to the point that the governor called a state of emergency, that the property and the potential injury and the level of civil disturbance was such that they declared an emergency. What possibly could require and inspire a meeting and a mobilization of such a group? Well, they were united under the cause that signs of the Confederacy should remain at the heart of the city. That's not for our debate this morning. The fact is where it went. The violence and the hatred that emerged was startling. And for someone of my generation not having experienced these things in my lifetime, it is shaking. The idea that certain lives matter more than others, or there's a supreme ideal race that we're aspiring to and that we can all be a part of it, is scary. These moments create a space and time for fear, even more so than that zipline fear where I'm speechless. It's that kind of utter paralyzing fear. The kind of fear that's unimaginable, that you hold your breath, close your eyes, and pray that it might be over. This kind of fear is something that I think Jesus speaks to today. In the midst of this fear, I hear Jesus pleading with us. Just be it. Just be it. Every story I watch, just be it. That an invitation doesn't even begin to express the earnestness that Jesus' message comes to us this morning, begging the people of God to say something and do something and be something that says and shouts and celebrates and embodies love, unity, and love. Nelson Mandela wrote, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they learn to hate, they can be taught to love." As God's people, we are standing for justice and equality and peace. We stand for our neighbors near and far, and we stand against hatred in all forms. And how do we do this? We do it by embodying the love of Christ and teaching it to all we encounter. Teaching people that all people are valuable to God, that all of us have worth, that all of us are part of the diverse, beautiful creation of God. And as such, we are love. We're made to love. We love because God first loved us. We're agents of love because we must be. Just be it. And in these times and in these places, we all kind of take a collective breath because it's all we can do. And we hear the reminder, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. Whether we're safely in the boat or walking out on the water, we will experience storms. Unspeakable at times, but surely life-altering storms. And in these times and all circumstances, we feel afraid and unsure of how we might step one step closer. Jesus is there reminding us of his constant presence and reminding us that we are God's light and we are God's life in this world. Just be it. This morning we close with the words of Teresa of Avila from Christ Has No Body. Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands. Yours are the feet. Yours are the eyes. You are his body. Just be it. Amen.